Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 496. We tackle the button and... Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, the Duke of You-Know, and of course, the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about all four parts, I'm inventing new words now, all four parts of the button. And we are going to be talking a little bit about the Injustice video game and the tie-in comic. We do mention in listener voicemails a little bit about Bug the Forager and a whole bunch of other things because we got a phone call from Russell, which I greatly enjoyed sharing on the show. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Mr. Segulin, we are sponsored this episode, of course, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Can you tell us a little bit about DCBService.com?
Well, DCBS always is wonderfully supporting of everybody. They have these great bundle packages, and I always talk about my bundles. Well, it does make for easy one-stop shopping, and they give you great discounts on it. We're at the end of the month, so we're waiting for the next month's bundle packages to come through, but I know they're going to be there. But here's the thing about DCBS. They're not just great comic book purchases. I get my statues through DCBS. I get my little figures and the various action figures and whatnot that I get through DCBS. They give you great discounts on these statues, on the collected editions, on the different trades. So if you regularly deal with your monthlies through your local comic shop, hey, that's great. But give DCBS a check, and a view just to see what other stuff they have that, maybe you can't get at your local shop. Maybe your local shop won't give you the same kind of deals that you can get on statues and action figures, T-shirts, apparel, movies, various collectibles and whatnot. DCBS is a one-stop shopping. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com. I'm a big fan of their deals of the week and the latest releases, of course. Over at InStockTrades.com, they have Doom Patrol Trade Paperback Volume 1. This is the Young Animal line. It's 50% off, only $8.49. We've got Wonder Woman by John Byrne, hardcover. 50% off, only $19.99. In the latest releases, they have Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps Trade Paperback Volume 2. 45% off, only $9.34. Dead Man, Mansion of the Forbidden, 45% off, only $9.34. This is a great way if you missed out on certain titles, or, like we mentioned earlier, Jim, you mentioned that you collect certain titles, specifically via trade because of finances or wanting to catch up or wanting to read them in ARC. InStockTrades.com is your source for this. So I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. I do want to remind everyone that DCBService.com is a digital partner. Whether you do Comixology or My Digital Comics, please link your accounts to your DCB Service account. You get 5% of those purchases towards your DCB Service order. Just a reminder, you shop through Comixology the same way as normal, except you've got to go to DCBService.com. They have a drop-down menu and the portals are there. Go through the portals because it sends you to a special link. Doesn't cost you anything more, but it does recognize your linked DCB Service account and that you're shopping through them. It gives them, obviously, a kickback from Comixology and gives you a percentage kickback as a purchaser from Comixology. So it's a great way to kind of expend your dollars a little bit more wisely and help out a sponsor of the show. So I want to thank you guys for checking that out. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
You're ready to move out.
Jim, I want to talk about a video game, actually. Injustice 2 came out, which is the big DC video game. It's a fighting game. And it's for people who aren't familiar with the game, it's of like the Street Fighter vein or Tekken or games like that if you've played them in the arcade. It's, you're two opponents facing each other and fighting it out. In this case, it's DC heroes and villains. The story, I'll kind of give a quick overview of the story. I don't want to get too spoilery with it, but I want to give you an idea on the premise and how it works, because a lot of times you look at these things and you go, okay, so it's Batman and Superman fighting. How does that work? Well, the storyline actually is very cool. So it takes and embraces the multiverse. This game's a true sequel to the first game, where you don't need to have played the first game, but if you have, the story continues. And this game actually puts you in a place where they tell you everything you need to know from the first game in order to be up to speed, but then quickly gets you involved in where the story has gone from here. So the premise from the previous game was, this is a different world than the multiverse. In this world, Superman and Lois Lane were married and having a child. The Joker played a trick on Superman where Superman accidentally killed his wife and child. Well, it was a joke gone wrong. I don't know if the Joker really intended on doing it. From Harley Quinn's side of the story, it wasn't supposed to happen the way that it was, and to the point where she actually turned into a good guy after this because of where the whole thing went. But Superman, needless to say, snapped because he killed his own wife and child. So it wasn't just the issue of the Joker doing it, which in and of itself you can make an argument that you can see where Superman would. And when I say he snapped, he still had a certain code of morality in the sense that he was going after the villains. But he was killing. And when I say killing, the Joker was obviously the first to go. And once you cross that line, the premise was, once you open that door, it's hard to shut it again. And it was basically hunting down the worst of the worst criminals with extreme prejudice. Then you start to become a warlord. And Superman kind of took over as, trying to better guide humanity because of how violent they were. Well, Batman's Batman, and Batman's actually done voice-wise by Kevin Conroy, and the whole voice cast is incredible. But it's the Kevin Conroy Batman. Obviously he's not going to stand by and watch his former friend go down this path without doing something about it. He forms a resistance. Because it's Superman, and people could sympathize, obviously, initially, members of the Justice League, with what he was doing, you have people siding with his side that are called the Regime, and then there's Batman's side as well. There were some heroes that died, some villains that died during the previous game. Some of them were brought back through the multiverse. Like Oliver Queen was brought back through this again.
Cool.
It's an Oliver Queen from the multiverse. But there's other characters that have been introduced in this game that weren't in it before. There's some really cool characters, though. The storyline that you're actually playing through in the game is pretty epic. There's a tutorial mode that they start you off with right away. I have a hoary fighting stick. I'm terrible at fighting games. In the sense that wrestling games I really consider myself pretty good at until I face somebody online, then I get schooled pretty quick. But as far as the actual going against the computer and stuff like that, I really enjoy playing those modes. These games, the same thing. I get into the story. That's usually where I stop. This one has an epic story, and just to illustrate it, Memorial Day, I really sat down for a good 5 hours of playtime with this game, and I got halfway through the story. So it's a big story in the game, and I really enjoyed that experience. Besides playing the story mode during that time, though, I was also playing what's called the multiverse mode. And when you go into that, through Brother Eye, you're seeing different happenings on different planets in the multiverse, or different worlds in the multiverse, I should say. And you're able to go there and complete certain tasks and level up characters. So I'm playing as the Flash in that, which I'm really digging. But what happens is you unlock, through playing this multiverse mode, add-ons for your characters, like upgrades to uniforms and equipment and better armor and abilities for your characters. They actually level up. So I'm enjoying playing that part. Some of them are available for only a certain number of days or hours. So like when you jump in there's a real incentive to keep popping in there, seeing what's new. You get bonuses from opening them up. So it's a lot of times those games have a deep story mode and a deep multiplayer mode, and then you're kind of done. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you go back and play the story mode again, sure. You play the multiplayer mode. You play like a single arcade mode where you just kind of pick random characters and fight against each other. And that stuff's all well and fine, and honestly well worth buying the game. This multiverse mode they keep adding on to, and there's download content coming for this game. I know in particular there's Wonder Woman download content based on the movie coming pretty soon. So I really enjoy seeing all that and seeing how much depth is in this game and knowing that it's something that when I'm done with the initial story, I'm going to want to play further. A couple other things in the story that I found that was really fun is Supergirl is introduced in this game. She comes into this world in the status quo I mentioned. Superman is in prison at this point because of the ending of the last game. She shows up into a world where she's been hidden away, and she's been told that Batman and his gang are terrible. They're bad. They're the bad guys. On a journey through discovery, finds out certain truths about what's been happening on this world. In the meantime of all this happening, though, Brainiac shows up. This is very early in the game. And when I say Brainiac shows up and is doing what Brainiac does. His intention is to take the planet. Obviously go after the last Kryptonians. So you've got like almost three-front warfare going on. It leads to a whole in-depth story. As far as the game's story system goes, you shift between characters. So the story starts off, you're playing as Batman initially. Then you will shift to playing as other characters. Great example of this would be playing as Harley Quinn, Green Arrow, and Black Canary head off on a mission together. Harley Quinn's really leading them into a certain area, and then Green Arrow and Black Canary are the two you're focused on. You can choose which one to fight as when you encounter enemies. So, you can choose to play as Black Canary, and Green Arrow will actually do something else. He's not just standing there watching. He will they actually have him doing something else when that happens. Or you can reverse it and do Green Arrow and she'll do something else. So I like that part that you make a choice, but then you feel like immersed in the story because your partner's actually doing something. And I really like that about the game. So there's a lot of depth to it. As far as one of the reviews I read went, they talked about how the story in this was better than some of the DC movies that have been out, or the DC movies could learn something from this. I would make a strong argument about this. This is very much a multiverse story. The characters are very well handled. If you're a big Superman fan, you're going to have to accept the fact that this was done to him, because of what the Joker did. But he plays wicked cool. It's fun to play as him as the game, to play as Supergirl. I got to play as her. Black Adam's in the game. You get to play as him. Wonder Woman. I mean, there's a whole cast of amazing characters in there. Aquaman's sweet. It's just a really depth-filled game where they're adding more characters as they go along. Cheetah, Reverse Flash, Darkseid. There's just a laundry list of just amazing characters that you can play as in this game. So for a DC fan, if you don't have a console, this is probably the time to look at one. I'm playing on the PlayStation 4. It does have PlayStation 4 Pro support, for those of you that know what that is, which is kind of cool. The Pro has a little bit of a beefier processor, so it outputs in a better resolution. So you get 4K resolution if you have a 4K TV, which is really cool. But I really enjoy the game. It was a lot of fun. And I'm reading the tie-in comic, which is done by Tom Taylor. And you'll remember him most recently from Earth 2, but also he's been doing the Injustice books. And they launched a brand new Injustice 2 tie-in comic. As of when we're recording this, there have been 7 chapters digitally. It's a prequel story to the game. So you're not playing through the game story. This actually gives you a sense of where the characters have gone since the last game. You do not have to have read or played anything to enjoy this comic. It starts off and gives you everything you need to know and drops you right in. So it's a great story that explains, the beginning has to do with Harley Quinn meeting up with the Suicide Squad. Now, Harley at this point is on Team Batman. So the Suicide Squad come looking for her and Amanda Waller and looking to reclaim, their former comrade. At this point in time, she is a member of the Bats team. So obviously you can guess where that goes. There is a big story going on here that I don't want to reveal too much. So it's definitely a comic that you want to read. If you're enjoying the game, it's a must read. If you're not playing the game, the comic reads well in and of itself. One of my friends, Phil, we were watching wrestling, and he made mention to me. He said, "Are you reading that Injustice comic?" And I hadn't actually read it yet because I was waiting until I got the game. And he said it's fantastic. And he doesn't have a game. I should say he doesn't have a game system. So it was really cool to see that this comic can be enjoyed by somebody who does not have a game system and just wants to read a good multiverse title. So it's really good stuff. So I wanted to recommend some of those just because I'm a fan of video games in general. And it's always pleasant when you have something that you love so much of the DC Universe and see it handled with such care. And it's really just a great, great game.
Cool. I'm sitting here just enjoying your rant, going, "Oh, cool."
Well, and I did a speeding bullet style because I know you don't have a game system, so I wanted to acknowledge the game because it's a very big release for DC fans, and there's probably people who are like, I don't have a console, or maybe I'm tight on my gaming budget. Is this worth getting? I would say if you liked the first game, 100% you have to. If you never played the first game, you don't need to, and they really made some serious improvements. It's what can I say other than the fact that it's our characters. So
now, question for you: character handling on the fighting and whatnot, and all that kind of the actual controller command functionality. Is it one of those where you got to push this, and that to do a move, or is it or someone who button mashes like I do? Can I make it through this?
Well, I button mash like you do.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing in this that I really like. I tend to do with fighting games like this button mash like you do as well, and I can do very well. I do a lot of sticking, moving, jumping, and bobbing and weaving. The cool part is if you do that, you can build up your meter and do the finishing moves. So the finishing moves are you'll hit the, I believe it's the R1, L1, R1 buttons, the left button and the right button up there, or it's the L2, R2 button, and I forget because I just kind of at this point do it. So I don't know which buttons they are, but it's the two buttons on each side of the controller together, and they do the finishing move when your meter fills up all the way. So that's all you have to do to unleash the finishing move. And the villains can block it sometimes, or your opponent, I should say, can block it sometimes. You can block it sometimes if you get good at it. There are other moves that are your, if you do down, right, and A, it does like Batarang moves and stuff like that. So the cool part is the tutorial in the beginning gives you kind of an overview on how to do those. I would say for the characters that I've been, like the Flash, I've been playing the Flash a lot now, I can probably do about a fourth of his moves. Which I'm a button masher like you, but yet I found myself wanting to do them. So I've been through practicing playing the character. You know how accidentally you discover, like, oh, if I do this, it does this? Yeah. So you accidentally discover things that you're comfortable doing. And so I found, like, doing the tutorial gave me kind of a sense of how, but it was actually through playing and just button mashing and enjoying myself that I discovered that, oh, if I keep doing this, it'll do this really cool thing where a great example of this would be Flash does this one hold where when he holds the character, he will hit them from the back, spin around to the front, hit them from the back again, the Flash super speed move, and it's sweet. His finisher's awesome. When you hit that, you will grab a person by the neck, drag them through time to ancient Egypt and slam them into a pyramid, drag them through time to the time of dinosaurs and slam them into a dinosaur, bring them back and slam them into the image of themselves. I mean, so the finishers are cool. Batman's, for example, will be, so this is like after you've either been hit a number of times or you hit them a number of times or a combination of the two, your meter starts to fill. When it fills all the way up, you can unleash this power move. Batman's is you hit both buttons together, a rope from the Batwing grabs them by the ankle, pulls them upside down up into the air. They fly all the way up and do that move where the Batwing does, where the moves, the moon's in there. Then fires them back down to the ground with missiles hitting them. I mean, it's like wicked sweet. So there's really cool moves, and every character has their own unique moves. It was very like Black Canaries. I was a big fan of Green Arrows. I'm a big fan of. These are just characters, just really neat, cool moves. Characters who I really thought I'm like, oh, I don't really care about them as much. I started playing as because wow, they really nailed their finishing moves. So that stuff's really neat. So it's easy to pick up and play, but then there's a mastery that you can gradually do over time. So you could be over at my house right now, and the two of us would be duking it out. It would take you an initial amount of time just because you haven't played games in a while to, feel comfortable with the controller. But then you could be holding your own competitively as we went on, sure. And I would have no doubt of that. So it's a fun game. It's well worth it. And these are, the characters you know and love. The story in and of itself is worth buying it for. Because playing through the story mode, I button mashed my way through it. And I should clarify, very similar to how I talked about Discovery, I started discovering things I could do and tried those same things out with different characters with different results because they have different power sets. So it was really neat to see that, like Captain Cold, doing stuff as him was pretty cool. So there's just a wide, or Bane is fun to play as. It's a wider range of characters and powers, and it's well worth playing. So it's good stuff. Green Lantern, I should say, is really... Green Lantern's finishing move is sweet. You hit the two buttons, and all of a sudden, he unleashes his big, giant foot down on the opponents, and he's actually building a suit of armor around himself after he smashes it down on this person that turns into, like, a mech that fires at the other character you're fighting. But before it fires... it takes its head as it's building it and smashes it down on the person again, puts it on top, and then he fires. It's really it's this really sweet, detailed thing where you're like, oh my gosh, the attention to detail and the sense that you're playing as these characters, even if you're not really good at these type of games, is really great. So I like the pick up and play aspect, Jim. And I am, like you, a button masher with fighting games like this. I play a lot of video games. I really enjoy them. When it comes to fighting games like that, though, I do start to catch on to certain moves, but I'm never one that, would say, geez, I've mastered this character. I will say so far, this game is probably the most I've mastered any of these moves, and I would say at the most, Jim, and I'm probably overselling myself when I say this, I've probably mastered a quarter of the Flash's moves, and I'm probably overselling that. Okay. So, but yet... Jim, I'm having an immense amount of fun playing as that character, and I really feel like I'm playing as the Flash. So there's not a whole lot of work I have to do to enjoy that experience. But I could see somebody who's like a seasoned gamer with this type of game, because I play a lot, but I got to admit that's not my strong suit, going, wow, it's really fun to master all of the moves and enjoy that. So I think there's something for a more casual gamer with this type of game. And there's something for your people that are really looking for something a little bit more hardcore where they really invest some time into mastery. And I like that. I actually think that the game appeals to a broad audience. It's doing very well in sales and reviews. So I've seen mainly 9 out of 10 reviews and stuff like that for it. But I do know on certain lists it's been, depending on what country you're talking about, it's been the number one selling game for a couple weeks. And I'm just glad to see it because it's DC, and it's a market, and it's a really well done game. So it's not even like you're saying, oh, I just want it to do well because it's a DC game. No, I want it to do well because it's just a great game. So it's good stuff. And I know you're looking to get a game system at some point, and this is one that I would highly recommend.
Now, is it exclusive PS4 or is it both?
Oh, it's both. It's Xbox One and PS4. So whatever game system you go with, it's not. It wasn't put out by Sony or Microsoft. So you can get it for whatever game system you want. It's actually by the same makers of Mortal Kombat.
Oh, so, okay, cool.
They're the ones that put out the game. And I think that might be a Warner Games license now. They might own Mortal Kombat because they did Mortal Kombat versus the DCU. And I do think at some point in time that was bought by Warner Interactive. I might be wrong on that. I could be right. I think that they could be. I know there's a link. And I think that those properties are owned together now. But it is, just to understand the fighting game pedigree, it's the company that makes Mortal Kombat games. So, good stuff. Would you like to talk the button?
Definitely. Let's talk button.
So the button kicks off with Batman number 21. And I was really... You and I were going to talk about this story initially when only 3 issues were out. And because of our schedules, it forced us to wait. And I'm so glad we did, because I even told you, I'm like... Dude, when you read issue 4, because you hadn't read it until like a few days before we're recording now, and so do you agree, without us going there, do you agree like we really needed issue 4?
Oh, God, yeah. we needed to talk issue 4 as well, and that would have been one of those if we had done it when we initially planned on doing this and only done the first 3, when 4 came out, we're like, okay, now we got to do a follow-up.
I'm really DC happy at the moment with everything they're doing, because I like the way that they're unveiling this story, this big overarching story that's going on, that it's not ba-bam, ba-bam, ba-bam. The button comes out, and it's a 4-parter. It's a crossover between The Flash and Batman. Now we're finally getting back to this Watchmen button that was discovered. We kick off with this hockey game that's going on, and we have our Legionnaire from the future who is here in present day. We don't know her full story yet, but she's watching this game and knows that somebody's going to die during it. And she's, in the Arkham really everyone thinks she's flipping out. And Batman's watching the game while flipping around the button. We're seeing that everything she said is coming to fruition. Yeah. I really loved the writing of this story and the artwork. I thought there was a great build of a sense of the greater universe of what's going on. It felt very much like a Batman story and very much like a Flash story. This is something I've been waiting for. The button. I want to know, what is this all about? They're teasing this in the right way. Because at this point, I needed more. But they gave me more in the story while building a real sense of anticipation. I know, I'm just going to jump to it. At the end, we find out that there is an upcoming miniseries coming with Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, and they're going to be doing a Superman Dr. Manhattan series. It looks like it's going to be coming up. It's a 4-issue miniseries. And I'm so excited for Jeff Johns coming back to comics and doing a miniseries like that. But it builds out of the button, which is just a great story here. We've obviously had this Psycho Pirate's mask sitting in Batman's cave. It starts interacting with the button, showing up on the scene because he wanted to have the Flash show up to, further their investigation. Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, shows up, who I love being here because he's in the Injustice game. We've gotten to see him in the Flash TV series. He's a character that's near and dear to my heart. It's great now to see him in the comics back again, especially in light of the fact that this story does, in fact, go to Flashpoint. What a great story.
I tell you, I liked how this one was laid out. This was a great layout on the issue because it started off nice and soft and kind of slow and just that I don't want to say slow because people think, oh, it's slow. No, it was that building, that momentum. And it's, you start with Bruce in the cave. You can tell he's thinking and he's going through. And I liked how they showed him he had the button in his hand and he's doing that passing over the knuckle kind of thing that people do. And you can tell he's just thinking and he's trying to ponder, trying to figure out, trying to solve the mystery. And then that just leads to the arrival of the Thrawn and then the arrival of Chaos and everything just goes all haywire. And I loved how they did that with just, the layout where they're doing multiple smaller panels on each page. It was like 9 panels per each page, breaking down 1 second at a time because you're dealing with a super speedster. I love that, just how they did that. That for me was one of the high points of this issue because of just, again, a simple page layout as just a regular grid, nothing fancy on it's a straightforward grid, but for some reason it really fit this layout. It really fit the story they were telling.
Hey, to add further to that point, when you go back to like the initial storytelling in the beginning, I agree with your clarification on how it was laid out because you're right. It was, I think, a deliberate pacing is the better way to say it, because I think what was going on in the hockey game with him running the button between his fingers let you be aware of the panel style that the story was going to be told in, which I think was a deliberate storytelling choice, and led you into a sense of time. Before we even saw numbers, you had a sense of time. And then the big splash hit, and we already had a countdown going prior to that. That was really great. And I loved this fight scene for everything you just mentioned. As the countdown was going on, we were seeing this battle in real time. And you and I are big fans of kind of what you don't see in between panels. There wasn't a whole lot here not to see because of the way the pacing was. And I really enjoyed the real-time delivery of this fight because of the fact that it was Reverse Flash and Batman. And you saw Batman dealing with a metahuman who is a super speedster. And really how he doesn't give up. He doesn't surrender. And he's always thinking. So really got severely beat up. And it's very rare that you see Batman beat up to this level. One of the favorite parts for me was the letter. Yeah, because Eobard Thawne saw the letter from Thomas Wayne, and you realized, oh my God, this is the guy from Flashpoint. So, he went through the whole Flashpoint timeline, knew Thomas Wayne, and tore up the letter, not for any reason other than to try and hurt Thomas Wayne, who was already, in his mind, dead. So he did this posthumously, which says a lot about how evil this villain was. I thought that was genius in how that was handled, because he didn't really do that for his son. I mean, he really did that for the purpose of sticking it to the dad after he died. What a vicious villain. And I really loved the writing choice of that and sticking to that as a motivation, because it did give you a sense of just how spiteful and vindictive Thawne really is, and understanding why this guy for years has been obsessed with the Flash, because he really holds on to a grudge.
Oh God, yeah. Like you just want to tell the dude, let it go, man. That's but yeah, showing just complete evil there. And I think that for me was another cool moment in that how they showed just how nasty he is. This wasn't it could have gone over the top. But, it didn't. It was just that great moment. He's sitting there, rips up the letter. And then Bruce's reaction, of course, to it was, again, great moments of Batman. Just, you're seeing the strategery. You're seeing him deal with a speedster. And of course, in his head, he's running the countdown. He's running the clock. I love the moment where Bruce, actually locks him to the ground. Goes, yeah, you can go blurry and you can go intangible, but your feet have to stay steady. Your feet has to be on solid ground. Junk drives the Batarang through his foot into the ground. Love that moment. Again, it shows Bruce is Bruce. It shows why Batman is so cool, that he could get that moment. And then he gets a couple good punches in. In the fight, you got to say, Batman lost this fight, but he, in the end, won the war.
You know what I really loved? That he was shooting for, and he kept time. He knew that he just needed 11 seconds because he was keeping track of the time, forgetting that Barry Allen's notorious for being late. And I really love that, because Barry Allen being the Flash, Barry gets caught up in other events. So the best part was, one, overtime, realizing that Barry wasn't going to show up on time. Then we get the bit where Thawne goes bzzz and comes back and is just decimated by who we know to be... Actually, this goes back to Pandora, doesn't it? Because we saw this happen to Pandora in the... Wasn't that in that Rebirth special?
Yeah.
So, wow. Really, really cool stuff. So then we saw that, and then the Flash shows up on the scene, seeing both of them laid out on the ground. Thawne dead, and Batman there. To your point, it was an issue with such deliberate pacing, but that pacing was pivotal to my enjoyment of the issue. I thought it was brilliantly laid out, and really set it aside as a great introduction to, I want to know what's going to happen next. Like, what happened to him? This really was a kickoff to a mystery versus actually revealing anything yet, other than the fact that Thawne finally saw the big bad, was a victim for it. What a great kickoff.
Yeah, I tell you, throughout this whole Button series, they did a great job with the teasers from one issue to the next. Because that was something that when getting ready for the show, going from issue 1 to, part 1, 2, 3, and 4, and just boom, 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 reading them in order, I was like, man, you really see just how, again, you get you going, it gets you jumped in on the point. I love that ending where they're laid out. You got Crispy Critter on one side, you got a beaten bat, and Barry shows up late going, hey, oops, and it was a really just that great moment. And then you jump from there to, again, starting off the part 2 issue over in Flash 21. And this was something that I loved, how each of these issues started off with somebody else. It started off with, last time was Saturn Girl. This time we're dealing with Johnny Thunder from, the JSA, where he's, again, another person appears to be a crazy old man, who's trying to reach out for, Thunderbolt. I thought that for me, that was a cool moment. Again, starting off this issue with this one, how we did the last time. We didn't start off with either Bat or Flash. This, again, it's showing this overall larger picture that's going to get played out.
The one that we lost the Justice Society, and it's all my fault. This is, for me, a geek out moment. I want to know what happened with the Justice Society. I didn't know where this was going to go in this story, that there was going to be such a link to it. They could have given me this, and it would have been enough for me just to see, wow, they're back. This idea that they could be coming back. I really love it.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. And then it was neat because you get that intro mystery, and then it goes on continuing of the Flash and Bat story. And I loved seeing just the cave laid out, the massive destruction throughout it, because that was a heck of a fight. But also, you got Barry Allen there. He's the forensic scientist. He's got the body laid out. They've got the different markings. It's you can see his forensic kit right there. And I loved how they made a point to put the different markers throughout the entire cave. Everywhere that Thrawn was, everywhere that there could possibly be something of relevance, there's a marker there. And it's classic, just it's a crime scene investigation. It's Barry laying out, doing what he does. And this was a kind of a really neat little moment where they could have half-weighed it, and I'm so glad they didn't. I'm so glad they went that extra mile in the artwork, where you're seeing the damage in the cave, and you're seeing, the indicators, you're seeing, the tape, the taped areas, you're seeing just, again, taking it to that next level of attention to detail. That was something that this story really played out for me.
I thought this is a great example of great dialogue. Because, this is not me dismissing anything you just said about the artwork. I think it's a marriage of both. Some in more extreme ways than others. The very first crime scene I ever saw was my mother's murder. Because of a lack of evidence, it was listed as a cold case. I dealt with that by dedicating my life to studying forensics. The crime lab became a second home. I was even in my lab the night I was struck by lightning that gave me the super speed powers to become the Flash. And now I can start to paint a picture of a crime scene before I even complete tests. But it wasn't the Speed Force that gave me the ability to do that. It was the time I spent at the lab. I can look around the scene and see the origin of every spot of blood, the intent of every vicious punch thrown, meant not to kill but to torture, how the fight worked its way across the cave, leaving destruction in its wake, and how it ended. I love that. Then it shows on the next page with Eobard Thawne dead. I just really loved you're in Barry Allen's head. You're in the way he thinks. And it's important to recognize the fact that we always talk about the superpowers that these characters have, but I love the fact that what connects Barry Allen with Batman is really that forensic scientist. And they respect each other for their respective contributions to detective work. I really enjoyed how this story embraced that and showed Barry's skills to be really on par with much of what Batman does because of who Barry Allen is. I really like that level of respect between the two. I'm a big Flash fan, and this just made me geek out even more about... I was a Wally guy for the longest time. I still am. I love Wally. I'm a big Barry Allen guy now. It's stories like this that have really contributed to that.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny because, I agree with you completely about the dialogue. That's something that I'm really digging with just this inner scope that we're getting from the characters. Part of me likes when they don't do the inner dialogue and just the information you get is what you see or what they physically say out. It's kind of like with certain characters, I think it works really well. With this situation, I'm so glad we're getting this inner dialogue in Barry. We're getting to see this. But the best scene, one of the best scenes for me was when he's sitting there and he's contemplating about how what Thawne did to him. And he has that one silent little moment under his breath. It's over, Mom. I love that. Because, again, this is the guy who killed his mother. This is the guy who, yes, we've learned throughout the process that what happens if he stops the event from happening. But this is also... this is the guy who murdered his mother, and that's a natural human reaction. I love the fact that Barry went there, and Barry's willing to admit that in a way there is some relief that the monster that killed his mom is now dead. That for me, I love that moment.
Yeah, there's so much of this that really was there to love. I loved when Batman was in the bed, and Barry was recognizing that he just got his butt kicked, and this man's still working. He's ready to talk through the scene of the crime, to talk through the case, to be a contributing member of what's going on. He's Batman. That's what Batman does, right? He keeps going. The mission must go forward. And it's that drive. So I'm really enjoying that aspect of what's going on with this.
I like their dialogue back and forth about just, did you do this? What about that? What about that? And they had that one moment between them where he's like, did you rerun it again to compare results? Bruce, come on. That was another little funny moment for me because Barry is somebody who could get away with that because Bruce knows Barry's level of competence. And that's something I like seeing these two working together because they do have that, as you said, they have that, the forensic side of it. They're both two great detectives in their own right. And I thought that for me was a kind of a neat moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting how this button came in because, it came back after Wally, obviously. We get this idea that now, okay, we've seen different clues pop up. Thawne came back, the helmet of Mercury that the Flash has seen. These different things that each of them have been seeing along the way are starting to add up to more and more clues of what's going on here. I feel like such a dunce when he mentioned the helmet of Mercury, not thinking that would play into this story somehow. Yeah. And I really liked the fact that there was so much going on here that I didn't see that coming. The Justice League Watchtower and the Lost and Found that they were talking about there was really great because I could see why Barry, after what happened with Flashpoint, would say, I put the treadmill away. I can't use it again. But now I've been given a reason that I have to pull this thing that I found was previously dangerous out of the dustbin. Really utilizes a tool to find out what's truly going on here. This was really a cool part of the story. And I loved the chance of Barry and Wally kind of having a moment there where they talked about that piece. This really is a story that shows where the DC universe has evolved into post the New 52 era, into the Rebirth era, where we're getting back these iconic character moments that feel new and fresh and classic at the same time. And that's pretty important to me right now, because I was a fan of the New 52. We've mentioned it many times. But this stuff with Rebirth, when I'm seeing Barry and Wally together, I'm like, oh, yeah, you know what? I'm on the team of DC putting its mythos back together is real cool. I love the fact that this is all connected. They've done a great job of taking everything that's happened in the DC universe and interconnected it. It's all connected again because of this storyline. This is something that was done to them. These are our characters. This is our world. This was done to them. I want to know what's going to happen because of this. I don't know that I need it when it's all said and done to go back to the way things were before the New 52 fully. I'm fine if there's going to be echoes of both, new and old. But I do like the connecting thread. Because I like connected continuity, and I like the fact that I can look back right now and go, because of this right now, reading the button, I'm like, you know what? All of a sudden now, every story matters again. That's great. I love that. Every story matters again. And that's a cool thing to do, because there's a reason to read your back catalog. This is part of this continuity. These are the characters that happened to. They don't remember all of it, but we sure do. And that's neat. Cosmic Treadmill is a geek out for me. And I always like this. I don't mind the fact that the Flash can run so fast that the Flash can time travel. Wally, I know, is able to do stuff like this pretty effortlessly, in his run. I like the Cosmic Treadmill idea because it's kind of a geeky, classic, Silver Agey tool, don't you think? And I like this kind of stuff. I would want to run on the Cosmic Treadmill. I think that's just something that's like wacky cool.
I actually like the Cosmic Treadmill over the characters being able to do the time travel without it. I like the fact that there is something that they need, that's something extra. Yeah, they have the Speed Force. Yes, they're super fast, but this is time. I like the fact that they need some other, just a little bit of extra oomph to actually break the time barrier. So for me, the Cosmic Treadmill was a really cool moment. I like seeing that. But I tell you, did you spend some time looking at the Lost and Found on some of the stuff they have in there? That's something I was doing a lot of. You see, you see the Beetle car, you see the Martian Manhunter's uniform was in there, which I thought that was a really cool kind of moment. And just the various other stuff. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but that looks cool.
They have Dr. Fate's helmet. They have different star rods. I mean, there's a whole bunch of gadgets in there as well. As I was looking through, there was a trident, shields. Yeah. There was a Viking. It looked like some form of Viking ship. I don't remember what story that was from. But, all kinds of cool, suits of armor and different things like that. Some of the things I think you were supposed to immediately recognize. Other things you were not. And I don't know, I thought like you, I thought that was really cool.
Now, of course, there's no surprise whatsoever that Bruce shows up and that he's not being left behind. But I like the fact that how when he first arrives there, you see he's hurting. You know, he needs to be hurting after the beating he took, but he's still Batman and he's still gut checks and he still knuckles through it. I love these moments again that it's between the two of them where he's like, hey, it's not for Barry's trying to talk him out of it, but Bruce isn't going to back down. And it's that acceptance and just that understanding of the two of them. And I love seeing Bruce out of his element. I love seeing him deal with these weird, supernatural, freaky stuff. Because, he is Batman. Yeah, he's prepared for everything. But there's some stuff out there that is just beyond what he should be comfortable with. And I love seeing him uncomfortable in those situations.
Yeah, that part was really fun for me. Like you said, the uncomfortable situations, Bruce. But here's the thing. Bruce goes with it. And I think there's a bravery to that. That is, I like seeing him in those moments where we remember that he's human. And he's seeing a world that he's not really comfortable with, but he's driven by needing to be there, knowing that his expertise will add something to it. And I like the idea that this is like a Brave and the Bold style team up. I was a big fan of that series growing up. Where it was Batman teamed up with somebody. And this is Batman and the Flash teaming up at its best. Yeah. I really dig this kind of stuff because it's very story-driven between the two. There's no fight between the two. It's really two heroes teaming up to solve a case. And I really dig this. You don't get to see these things done so well, so often, where it's not a series that's devoted to characters teaming up. I like this is organically done within the book, and that it was 4 issues, the 2 books, I should say, and that it was 4 issues with 2 creative teams that really worked together to do a great job on this, because I really felt like, and it's a testament to the writers and artists on both books, I felt like this was a continuing story where nothing was jarring, and that was pretty important, was the story flow.
Oh, definitely. And that was something that, again, you mentioned how it just the flows from one issue to the other. We're going with different creators, different writers. That's something I always wonder about how much, how do they coordinate that? Do they, is it open dialogue between the two of them? Does somebody else lay out the overarching, did one of them pick the overarching story and then each one of them specifies it to their title? Those are the kind of things that, because it reads one overall story.
Yes.
Each one has its own different feel to it, but it does read as one overall story. When I'm reading the Bat titles, the parts of the Bat books, it's reading like I'm not, taken out of it. But when I go from Bat to Flash to Bat, back and forth, I'm not going, whoa, this is crazy. It's a great flow through story-wise and visually. Yeah, different art styles, different art teams, but it's nothing that's so crazy or such a dramatic change that it throws me off.
And that's pretty key. It's I like that thematically the issues feel like their own because I think it keeps it interesting. And I actually don't mind that the art teams are different because I really enjoyed the artwork throughout. I shouldn't say don't mind. I enjoyed all of the artwork. I thought it was really great artwork. I love the bit as they're running through time. They start seeing variations of how they came together. The original Justice League, the years that were taken away, like when they did the mind wiping.
Yeah.
Barry dying in the Crisis. All of those bits in there and realizing that these are the years that were taken from us. These are things that really happened. This is not something that was fake. This is something that we were a part of. The cosmic treadmill then pulling them into some form of speed bump there. And what the speed bump was is something that was cool. It's the Flashpoint world, which is the same world. It shouldn't exist anymore. But it was being held in place in stasis. Not in stasis. It was continuing because of what I'm assuming is Dr. Manhattan was holding that in place. And for what purpose? Why was he doing this? And making Thomas Wayne think that everything he heard from Barry was not true.
Yeah, I like that. Again, a great opening for, Batman 22 with having it be Thomas Wayne, and bring us into the fact that the Flashpoint universe didn't go away. It didn't disappear, and again, these were some really just, moments that, because you got to, by the end of Flashpoint, Thomas kind of started developing more of the Bruce style to him, more of a hero, less the vigilante. He still was a bit hardcore. He still was a killing machine. He still was his version of Batman, but you kind of saw the hero. You saw the sacrifice that he was willing to make to save his son. Because in Barry, that was the thing that was the key that Barry got him to help him was, hey, in my universe, your son's alive. You're the one who's dead. Your son's alive. Immediately he went into sacrifice mode. So now we're seeing him here where it's, again, everything was a lie. Everything was wrong. It wasn't, the world didn't end. It continued on. And now we've got the Amazons and the Atlanteans have finally come up with a common enemy. And they're working together, and that's wonderful. Unfortunately, you're the common enemy, Batman. They're coming for you. I loved how that played out because this massive war was destroying millions and, this horrific thing between Atlanta, and Themyscira. And now they found peace and a common enemy. Batman.
Did you say Atlanta?
Did I say Atlanta?
Yes.
Okay, Atlantis.
It's about time Atlanta and Themyscira hashed it out.
You know what? Atlanta's a tough town. So, I could see them throwing down and, holding their own against Themyscira.
And what's the great part about that is if you finally get that going, you could have Atlanta and Themyscira too. Because people would really rally behind that as a series. So would you be Team Atlanta or Team Themyscira?
Oh boy.
And you got to choose one.
I know, I got to choose one.
You can't do the I like them both equally.
No, I'll give you a definite. I think I'd probably go with Team Themyscira because Wonder Woman's really cool. I really dig Wonder Woman, especially what they're doing with her now and, what the story's been going on in her book, the movie coming up, everything. I think I'd go probably, I'd definitely go Team Themyscira. Now, if this had been a couple months ago, I may have gone Team Atlanta, but I'm on all full on 100%, Team Themyscira. That's my call.
You know what it is? Unlike you, I'm not wishy-washy. I've always been Team Atlanta. So, and honestly, you know what it is? I rally behind the well-known heroes of Atlanta. So I'm going to go with Team Atlanta. I'm going to say, so this is going to be one of those, it's very much like Marvel's Civil War, where it's a Team Cap, Team Iron Man. I'm going to be Team Atlanta. You know what it is? It's a philosophy thing. And I'm with the philosophy of Atlanta.
Well, you got your right to make your choice. Granted, you're making the wrong choice, but you do have the right to make that wrong choice. So.
Anyway, so back to this series and Flashpoint. What I really appreciated about Batman number 22, and I didn't know they were going to do this, because you could have just easily put him in the cave and we would have assumed that this happened during some point of Flashpoint. What this laid out the fact is Flashpoint never ended. Barry ran off and Flashpoint continued on to the point where now, throughout this, Wonder Woman and Aquaman have teamed up solely for the purpose because they found Batman to be a pest. and they're looking to exterminate him. And he's contented himself that he's going to die here, so has rigged explosives to blow everything up. Guess who shows up on the scene mid detonation attempt? His son and Barry. I was a big Flashpoint fan. I didn't realize how much until this happened. And I'm like, man, I really liked Thomas Wayne from this. I liked this story a lot and how it played out. I'm really glad to see this opening up again, an opportunity to revisit this. I like alternate universes. Age of Apocalypse is one that, I never tire of over at Marvel. And this is a lot like that. I like when we go to these alternate worlds where certain events have pivotally changed the happenings of the universe. I like that Bruce and Thomas didn't quite know how to deal with each other.
Well, you think about it, that had to be a really freaky moment for both of them. because these are two guys who don't really express their emotions, don't express their feelings. They're both very, that hold, keep the emotions bottled up. And this is going to, and this right here is just that one moment. And I loved seeing those two together where, especially like Bruce sees the gun. He's like, I was never able to recover it. What's going on here? And I love just that father-son moment when they look at each other. And it's that, it was kind of one of those things that just kind of gets you going, dang, that's cool. What's going through his mind? What is he thinking right now? And this is one of those things where I'm glad they didn't put the thought bubbles in there, just because I want to just play out everything that I'm thinking that Bruce is doing. Because, he's analyzing him. He's studying it, trying to figure out, yes, this is actually him. Where am I? What's going on? Laying out the game plan, and just it's the massive automatic, detective mode that Bruce is in. But it was kind of a cool how they did it, where you're seeing just the shock and the surprise on their faces, on both of their faces. This was, again, I loved the art team, in these books and how they told stories, especially the one scene where Flash and, Bruce first arrive. Mm-hmm. And Bruce is saying, hey, Flash, this place, I know it. I've known it ever since I fell down here as a child. If you look in the background, then you'll see, Thomas, Batman, sitting there in his chair getting ready to detonate. I love how the fact that they put him in there and you can see him right in the background. If you don't pay attention to the details around, you'll miss it. And that was kind of the cool thing with, doing my art read-throughs on all 4 of these issues, where you have those little moments of, see this little bit here, see this little thing right there.
I really liked the bit when the team's coming down from, it's Themyscira and Atlanta coming down to take down the Bat family and the Flash. There's this conversation between Thomas and Bruce about the Batcave clearly looks more barren than Bruce's. There's a discussion that Thomas doesn't have the defenses that Bruce would have had because his mother was the planner. And I like the idea of, you're the product of both of your parents, and Bruce got some of that skill set and traits from his mom, which I like the distinction between mom and dad. I think they've done a lot in recent years to, I think, flesh out and validate mom's presence just as much as dad's. And I really like that because I think it adds more to this sense of why this son has had such great loss from both of the parents passing away. And I really enjoyed the writing on that sequence. And then seeing it lead into this fight. Again, this is another issue that was laid out differently. If you take a look at the first issue, Batman 21, we go into the Flash, then we go into this. Each issue has its own unique layout and feel, yet thematically the story is moving forward. And I think it's driven by the story that each issue is laid out differently. And that design, I think, has allowed a lot of creative freedom for the creative teams in those issues to try and deliver their portion of the story to keep it moving forward. And I think the story benefits from this. Another great dialogue-laden issue, because the dialogue between Bruce and his father, we're all in this together, we don't do guns, the usual stuff, and they're going at it with fists against all of these people. That spread where it's we fight and it's Batman and Batman, Thomas Wayne and Bruce Wayne fighting together. Man, did that kick butt. This was a dream team up, and I really love the way they delivered this because I'm a geeky Batman fan, big shock, and I really liked seeing this because it was something I didn't think we'd see in the comic pages, and it was really delivered.
Oh God, yeah. And I'm as you're going, I'm just kind of nodding my head, yes. I loved this moment between the two of them. Just again, everything you said. Where because in the past we've had some past Bat issues, where Bruce goes into the importance of his mother. So you're seeing it here with her being the planner, and he kind of gets that personality from her, where he gets more of the physical brute force he got from his father. And it was a great, he is the combination of the two of them. But just that fight sequence and just that knowing, and it was funny because you knew how it was going to end, unfortunately. Going through this, you could tell this wasn't going to have a completely happy ending for them, just because the nature. But we do get moments of closure for both Thomas and Bruce. And I like the fact that each of the characters gets, something. They kind of get a little bit of peace in their life, but it's not a complete closure. It's not a complete peace, where Bruce wanted to bring Thomas back, but he couldn't, or Thomas wouldn't go. It's one of those things where I really liked how this played out for, again, tugging at the heartstrings, the emotional moments on top of, you get these great, bam, big action fight sequences, emotional moments, bam, big moments, emotional. And they did a great job with the roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah, and that part was great. I do want to kind of like reiterate, you're talking about the team up between Batman and son. I like that Dad was trying to determine who his son really was. And in some ways, validating for Bruce that he's Dad. Because really, there was a history changed here, but they had a common shared bond of when Bruce fell into the cave, they had that moment together. Do you remember what I said when I was pulling you out? Barely. You were whispering because you didn't want to scare the bats. And then Bruce, very quietly under his breath, Dad. That moment between the two of them, I know you have a close relationship with your dad. I had a close relationship with my dad. That's something you connect with in those moments. It makes them feel very human. It fleshed it out. That little panel with Dad, very small one right there, hit me. I was like, ugh. I lost my father recently, and I was like, oh, man, I'm connected. And that's what comics do, right? It's this emotional fleshing out of relationships between characters. And when it's done really well in a moment and it's delivered with this kind of pacing, you connect with it naturally. And I thought that was something that was really a cool sequence for me. I did not want to see Thomas Wayne gone at this point. He's like, you have a grandfather, I have a son. Come with me, father. I like that Thomas Wayne recognized in that moment, I've got to save my son. He's got to get out of here. I can't go with him because what will that do if I go with him? The sacrifice he makes there, Flash, you promised me that you'd save my son. You were my world, son. I delivered you myself. And the moment I saw you, I knew every choice I'd ever made had been the right ones. And just seeing that sequence, because they led to you. You're the greatest gift this life has ever given to me. And there is more I should have shared in that letter, so listen to me. Don't be Batman. Find happiness, please. You don't have to do this. Don't do it for me. Don't do it for your mother. Be a father for your son in a way that I never could be for you. Let the Batman die with me. We can save you. And in that moment where he's like, you have. I love that he threw down the detonator. I thought that was the coolest, most kick-butt moment. He threw down the detonator, throws on the cowl, runs out there, and you see that sometimes, this was a great line, sometimes we fall, son, but always remember, Waynes never stay down, we rise. I'm hoping in this story arc, wherever this is going, Thomas Wayne running into there like he did, and I will geek out if this happens. This isn't the last we've seen of him. We will see him one more time because whatever the upcoming battle is coming, I think he ran towards it.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm hoping that that's where it's going to happen. I'm hoping that the moment of the big bad and the big battle, we're going to see him come flying out of the light, and it's going to be one of those last minute out of nowhere he comes in for the save. Now, I don't see, I don't see him sticking around and surviving everything.
I don't either.
But it would be awesome if they could somehow figure it out. Because just imagine what the universe would be, the bad universe would be like if Thomas Wayne was around. If he actually was alive and there for Bruce, for Damian. How awesome would that be, having Thomas see what Bruce has done as Batman? And especially given the fact that Thomas told him, hey, stop being Batman. You don't have to do this. Imagine if he's now back from the grave and he's alive. What would happen with Bruce and the mission? What would happen, at the manor? There's so many different things story wise they could go with this that I wish they would do it. I don't think they're going to, other than maybe we're going to get that one moment, that one heroic moment coming from Thomas. But to be honest, you think about it, you look at that final page, that right there is a true hero send off. That's a great way to end Thomas Wayne as Batman. So if we never see him again, we've had a cool ending. We've had a cool moment. We've had that heroic moment where he can die and be dead, and it would be cool and be okay. Granted, like you, I want him back, but I love the fact that they gave him his moment.
Yeah, and that's what we want, right? Well, here's the thing. A moment should resonate with you where you're like, I want more, right? So they did their job. Whatever happens there, to your point, whether we see him again or not, they gave the moment. And the moment really meant something to me, to the point where you do want more. You're anticipating more. I love the Thawne because of the fact that it's time travel in the flashes, winds up showing off at that point in time, continuing on with the button, going off to face, the god at that moment. I loved, and they've never faced someone like me, was a great ending. These issues each had a particularly good ending to them that made me really excited for the next issue. They didn't need to give me much to get me excited for the next issue. Really, what they needed to do was give me the cover of Flash number 22. Oh, man, I am a JSA geek. Now, let me clarify something. With the New 52, they launched the Earth 2 series, James Robinson doing the writing on it. And, it eventually went on to Tom Taylor. And I really enjoyed that a great deal. I always loved the classic JSA, and I felt there was room for both. I want these guys back in the worst way. Jay Garrick in this issue just was... The covers were a pure geek out. Seeing them running against Eobard Thawne, and Bruce being the one that was hearing the voice at first, saying, did we hear him? It's, there's something going on. My father wasn't a vision, Barry. He was real. And Barry almost being in denial at that moment. Don't listen, Bruce. You'll stray and get pulled to an era. You'll get lost. Let's focus on. But it really was Jay reaching out. And I knew because of the cover who it was that was talking. I absolutely loved the part where I saw Barry there. I'm like, oh, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. Show us it. It was awesome. What a tease this issue was.
And again, lettering was really cool with when it was Jay talking. They had the blue panel with the yellow lightning bolt, etc. But very distinctively making sure it's a Flash, but it's not Barry. And I liked how that was. Again, this was a great opening because of running through time and Speed Force and whatnot. Again. I loved, as I said before, I love the fact that Barry's on the cosmic treadmill. I love the fact that he needs to have that little extra something oomph, for him. But even he's still not fast enough to catch him. I think that is kind of a neat thing where, dealing with someone who is so fast that in time and space he can't catch him. This is his realm. This is his era, and I like the fact that we have this villain who is that powerful, but. Again, everybody's got a classic weakness, and Thrawn's, is his, and I keep saying Thrawn instead of Thawne, and I think I always do that, but Thawne.
Did you read the Star Wars? Did you read the Star Wars trilogy?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I know that's where it is. The Timothy Zahn series. Yeah, I know that's the fact where it's coming from, but it's. I love the fact that his weakness is this arrogance of his. Because again, it really fits just how evil and nasty he is. This is, Luther has an arrogance to him sometimes that gets him in trouble. But Luther's arrogance is not based on the fact that he is just, because he's such an evil person. Thawne's is because he's such a nasty, horrible person. That's where his arrogance comes from. That's where, because he's just nasty and horrific person. So I love how his arrogance fits him. How this, these flaws that he has fits this character, and that's what brings him down. It fits the, what they're building for, and who he is.
Jay Garrick's I'm Free, that whole sequence that came there where he was kind of teasing Barry. And here was the interesting part. He was teasing Barry with saying my name, Jay, and it freed him enough that he could get the two of them out. I really loved seeing Jay use his powers to get them out, him to save the day. Barry not really recognizing who he was, trying to pull him out the same way, but not being that tether. I'm so curious to see, is it the Johnny Thunder that's his tether? Is it something else that's his tether? I don't know what it is. I want to know more. I want to see who that person's going to be. Is it his wife? What is going to bring him back to this world? The more like that happened on this, oh man, it was like they gave me and they took away. I was so hoping Jay Garrick was going to stick around, but I love the way the story did this because it really has pulled me in that I'm in DC for the long haul. I want to see where this story is going to go. I want to see my JSA back. I want. And that's what a good story should do to build anticipation. This creative team did a great job in all these creative teams, I should say, did a great job in all of these issues in delivering the kind of story that got me excited for that. And gave us this great epilogue with Bruce and Barry that really struck me. You know, as the two of them were kind of debating this whole thing. Is this over? Is it not? Where do we go from here with this case? It's something that I really love that these two had these moments together. The dialogue there was great. The visuals were great over the graves of Thomas and Martha Wayne, particularly Thomas Wayne, obviously.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, you know, you got to it's, you know, the founding principle of Batman is the fact that he is this child who witnessed this horrific thing. You know, and Barry, the founding principle of Barry is he is the child who witnessed this horrific thing with his mother dying. You know, his first crime scene was his mother's death. Bruce's first crime scene was his parents' death. You know, and I like the fact that, you know, Bruce acknowledges that he had a moment of hope, a boyhood dream. It's, you know, and he's like, it's almost cruel. And Barry's like, no, I think of it as a gift. You know, and it's the moment that they had this one moment, that they had this one point in time that he, you know, could experience and be with his father and see his father and say the words, you know, those final moments, you know. And I liked how the fact that, you know, again, you have the light and the dark in these two characters, that they're so common and they're so, you know, they're so connected, but they are so, when you look at them, they're so broad and different. You know, people always make those kind of analogies and comparisons when you're looking at Superman for the same way, where it's the light and the dark. Well, the Flash and, you know, Bruce are the light and the dark. And I like how when they bring these characters together, and it kind of makes you wonder what's going to be next for these two, because this mystery isn't done yet. So their team up's not done yet. You know, there's going to be more coming out of this. And I think that for me is always a great story being told, when you get the full story, you get your beginning, middle, and end, but then you're still left going, okay, I want more now. This was wonderful. I want more. You know, and I think that is something that they really did in these 4 issues.
The ending of this with you know, the greater world that we were seeing, and seeing Batman, the bat signal going up, and Batman taking the words of his father to heart, knowing full well that he is going to go out as Batman, and this isn't the end of it, but, you know, seeing that emotionally and deeply affected him, because he is that wounded boy you mentioned, and I really liked that piece. But then going to the button, there were multiple points in time where I thought this issue was ending, because I don't always pay attention to page counts, and I thought the issue was over. And I'm flipping through, I'm like, oh, the button's there. Dr. Manhattan talking to Laurie. I'm like, oh, yes! This was so geeky great. And leading to that epilogue where the button's just floating, and the blood splotch is changing into a Superman symbol, leading to Doomsday Clock, November 2017. And I should remind that it's Jeff Johns, Gary Frank, and, of course, Brad Anderson. And I can't wait for that. This is going to be a geeky thing to shout out. Do you see this ad for the DC Looney Tunes team-up that are coming this month? I am really excited for these. Martian Manhunter, Marvin Martian Special, Batman Elmer Fudd, Legion of Superheroes Bugs Bunny, Wonder Woman Tasmanian Devil, Jonah Hex Yosemite Sam, which it's Jimmy Palmiotti, right?
Yep.
Lobo and Roadrunner. I mean, I'm in for all of those. I mean, I think that they're like geek, because the creative teams are sweet. Great art, great writers. They're like a can't lose.
Tom King is doing the Batman Elmer Fudd.
Yes.
Come on.
With Lee Weeks on awesome. Art. I mean, these are specials they're really putting together. Just top-tier creative teams. I'm very, very, very into those crossovers. Just because they're putting their top tier talent, which, in the past, I think one of the things why I haven't taken those type of things very seriously is because you've kind of just handed them off and made them fluff pieces instead of really putting talent that had some really cool stories they could tell on them. This is really exciting. I'm looking forward to it. The art style, I think, for the cover says a lot.
Well, and it's funny because I'm looking at the Lobo Roadrunner special, and it's Lobo and Wile E. Coyote working together to get the Roadrunner.
Crazy.
That looks awesome because you know what? I'm rooting for Lobo and Coyote. I want to see him get the Roadrunner.
The Roadrunner had it coming.
There's the Family Guy, where they did that, where Wile E. Coyote finally caught the Roadrunner, and they showed this whole thing where he accidentally gets him, but then he's sitting there and he does it's kind of like a big turkey dinner, and they do this whole going through the whole process where he finally gets him, and then he's like, "What now? I've spent my whole life trying to get him." And he kind of falls into depression, and it was just this whole thing that Family Guy did on, and it was one of the little quick vignettes that they do in the middle of the episode that I still to this day every time I see it I laugh out loud just because it was just that funny moments of Coyote figuring, oh my God, what now?
And so well put together. I agree with you. That kind of stuff I really enjoy as well because, like you said, they're so well put together, and it's kind of like the sequel that never should happen but did. It's good stuff. I really enjoyed enjoyed this series. It did build an anticipation. Here's what I'm figuring: does the summer event tie into this at all? I don't know.
Good question. I don't know. It's one of those things that. I think I like the fact that we're getting answers, but there's still this massive mystery of what's next, what's coming down the pipeline. And I think that, again, is a great way to tell this massively universal, affecting event. It's, like, man, I want more. I
do. DC's delivering on all thrusters for me right now. I'm really enjoying my reading quite a bit. I'm having to do, like you are, because I'm doing a lot of catch-up work, for between work and taking classes and stuff like that. I just finished my principal licensure, and I just took the test. So I've got a little bit more free time again. But I'm getting ready to head into my superintendent's license and my doctorate in the fall. So it's like the next phase I'm jumping on. And why it's even relevant is, time is something that's always a commodity for all of us, right? Time and money when it comes to hobbies like this. Being drawn into great quality storytellings like this is not only an escape for me, but it's also you got to manage out that time. I'm a video game fan. I mentioned it. I'm a film fan. Obviously, like everyone, I got television shows I like and stuff like that. So my time gets eaten up very fast. So when it comes to reading, I want to be reading stuff that really matters to me. That I feel like when I'm sitting there, it's not a trudge. I'm excited. And it means something, and it's an escape, and just really motivates me. It's that break from everything. And these comics have been delivering so well for me. This Button series is just one other example of something really great quality-wise. I know our next episode we're going to be talking about the Wonder Woman film. I'm so excited about DC multimedia right now. Stuff that's on TV, stuff that's direct-to-video release, the theater. Seeing Wonder Woman on the big screen finally. This crept up on me. I didn't. I mean, literally, when I was, you and I have been talking about the next few episodes that we're going to do because we're reading ahead to make sure that we're ready for them because we want to get back to some regular delivery for all of you. So, we're kind of front loading ourselves with some ideas of shows that are coming up and topics that we want to talk about from various DC story arcs that are going on. And as we were getting there, we didn't schedule Wonder Woman. We were thinking, we got Wonder Woman to talk about. She's being released this week. So it's nice. Our next episode, we're going to be able to talk about the Wonder Woman film finally. And the pre-reviews, the ones that are coming out, that have been seen so far, are very positive for this. I'm super psyched. Now, let me ask you this. A lot of times we've been walking into these films feeling like, there's a witch hunt going on. So you walk in with a very negative vibe, and obviously that kind of affects your perception when you walk in, where your expectations are low because, you've heard so much crap. Well, now, this is a little different. we're walking in with some really positive reviews. Does that affect you? I mean, your experience? Do you walk in then, and does that all of a sudden make you disappointed when it like doesn't quite deliver to that level? Or do reviews affect you if you've seen them or not? Do they affect you at all when it comes to your own personal enjoyment of films? How does that work for you?
Well, the pre-reviews, no. I don't listen and I don't read them and I don't hear what's going on. After I've seen a movie, if I like it, I like to find the negative reviews. Mm-hmm. You know, just for one, I like to see why, you know, something I like, people don't like. What did they see differently than I did? And, you know, it kind of helps me put things into perspective. It doesn't change. It won't, change my opinion. You know, if I like the movie, I'm still going to like the movie. Like, Suicide Squad, classic example. I loved Suicide Squad. I thought that was an absolute wonderful movie. I wish we'd get a second one. But when all the negative stuff started coming out, I started reading it and seeing what they were saying. And, I can understand some people's points. I disagree with it, but I can understand it. Especially some of my radio people whose opinions I actually really like, and normally we're spot on with each other. They did not like Suicide Squad, and they had the various reasons behind it, why they didn't like it. And I'm like, but it was an awesome movie. I enjoyed it. It was, so it was one of those things that, I'll listen to after the fact. I'll listen and I'll read and I'll see what's going on with it. But as a general rule, I try not to let it sway me. Now, there has been times when I will admit, there has been times it's, affected me, like the Baywatch movie. I haven't seen it, and I highly doubt I will see it. Just even though it is The Rock, and The Rock's awesome, I'm hearing way too much negative stuff for me to actually go out there and, take my time to actually watch that movie. So that may end up being a wait until it comes out on video and or comes out on HBO.
Yeah, it's really funny because I saw some of the previews of it, and I'm a big fan of The Rock. So I was like, okay, The Rock doing this, I could see this being really funny and really enjoying it. So the previews kind of led me to believe that I might be into it. Oh my gosh, like the Rotten Tomatoes meter was like 19% or something like that. I got to admit, it affects me with that. It is funny, though. I will say reviews affect me on something where I was already tentative. Like, I was looking at that, I'm like, oh, okay, it's The Rock. I might be interested for that reason. Is it really necessary to have a Baywatch movie? But it's The Rock, so I'm going to go check it out for The Rock. When it's a property I love, though, the reviews, negative reviews, will not keep me from seeing it, will not keep me from giving it a chance. I will want to be open-minded to enjoying it. If I don't, I don't. I don't walk in and give myself an illusion or anything like that. But here's the thing. If I do, I'm not going to all of a sudden go because I've read 10 negative reviews, go, well, I must not have really enjoyed it then. I've got friends of mine that do that. Like, they'll go to the movie, you'll walk out and you'll talk in the parking lot for another 2 hours about how great it was. And then the next day, they'll be telling me about how they read a review and they've rethought the entire movie. And I'm like, I like to read reviews too, and often they will illuminate me to something, like you mentioned, a different perspective. And I can appreciate it and see it. And I want to go see the movie again to see if I see what they saw. But that's not going to change the fact that, man, when I was there the first time, I had a great time. I mean, and that's, usually when I go to a movie theater, I'm pretty good at selecting movies that I know, because I don't get to see everything. You remember when we were younger, I used to see a lot of movies. Our friend Chris Baranowski, who I haven't seen in years, but there was a stretch where he and I were going sometimes twice a week to Cinemark because they had the dollar movies, and seeing like everything as they came out, and maybe not every movie, but certainly quite a bit of movies, because I love the theater experience. I think it's something that I've got a big screen TV here at home. I enjoy watching movies on it. But I do like, especially with certain big epics like Wonder Woman, I would never be satisfied seeing that for the first time on my TV at home. I want to see that in its majesty on a big screen in the theater with the 3D glasses on going, holy crap. That's what I want from my experience. And I want to see that from Wonder Woman. I'm very excited for that film to come out, to be delivered, and to give me that experience. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. And I'm hoping these reviews pan out because I think it's just going to be a very special experience.
Yeah, me too. I'm in. This is one of those where I got to see it in the theater. I'm going to. Yeah, I'm probably going to break my opening day rule and maybe catch it on Thursday. Just because it's, when they first started announcing this, and I started reading stuff on this, I was getting excited for it. And especially when I started seeing the different characters, the different actresses who are playing the Amazons. And I didn't recognize any of their names. So on IMDb, I'm clicking on it. I'm seeing like, oh, this person was a stunt coordinator. This person was a stunt person. This person, and I'm looking at all these things going, man, they've got some physically active. So this isn't just going to be, oh, la, 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 Themyscira. No, this is going to be Themyscira. We're going to get some warriors. And I was excited, and that was something I was like, yes, we're going to get some Amazons here. So it's, yeah.
I've got to ask the question.
Yeah.
Because what you just did begs a certain question. Okay? Where on earth have you seen, oh, la, 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 Themyscira?
The TV show.
That was, what TV show are you watching that had that?
The Wonder Woman TV show.
The 70s one?
Yeah.
And that had oh la 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 la. That was scary.
Okay.
The music on that was phenomenal.
Well, okay. I'm not saying it directly, but it had like it was more of look at all these hot women, not look at these, warriors who also look good. It's kind of like you think back to the animated, animated Wonder Woman that we love so much because they really showed them as Amazons. They showed them as warriors. And that's what I really wanted. I want to make sure we get that notion that these are warriors. These are, people of honor, and just that, they have the code. And I needed to see that. And, the initial clips we're seeing, the teaser trailers, as I said, seeing who they're having to play the different roles. I'm like, okay, they can pull off a physical presence.
When was the last time you saw the first season of the 70s Wonder Woman?
Years and years and years ago. So I'm based it on childhood memories.
I honestly, the first season, which took place during the war, I would make a strong argument that for that era, remember we're going back to the 70s, so let's be fair. For that era, I thought they did a pretty good job of showing the warrior for that era. So it's, and I've got to be clear on that era. It's kind of looking like the Christopher Reeve Superman for that era. Right. I don't think you could do the Christopher Reeve Superman today and get away with it. It wouldn't work. It does when you watch it on Blu-ray now and you see, the majesty of what was done back then. I think the Wonder Woman TV series, the first season in particular, works like that. It's not that I dislike the later seasons. Don't get me wrong on that piece. Sure, there was a comedy aspect to some elements of it. But I thought Linda Carter played a very majestic Wonder Woman, and she was really good. I get what you're saying compared to the Warriors as we see them now in the animated feature and in the comics and what you're seeing today. It's a different sort of Wonder Woman now. It's an evolution of the character. So I would agree with that argument. I think Gal Gadot is a very modern-day Wonder Woman in the portrayal, and I think she's wonderful in it. But I thought Linda Carter was amazing back in the 70s. I was a big fan of that show. The first season in particular, I think, is one that when you watch it, you see, oh, wow, for that era, they were really doing some unique things with the character that made her a little different than some of the female characters. Because that's also an era when you had, like, Jamie Summers as the Bionic Woman. So there were some strong female characters that were on television taking on lead roles in science fiction fantasy. And I would say Wonder Woman counted for that during that era. It was some pretty cool stuff. The first season's one I would recommend in general, just to see thoughts. That might be one at some point in time we do on the show. Maybe watch the pilot, the first episode of it, and really talk about how that compares to present day interpretation of the character. Because I'm giving you my impression because I've seen it in the last few years. You haven't. You may feel the same way. I think it's on iTunes too. You can grab it.
Yeah.
And, we can do that. That might be a fun thing to do on a show at some point when we just got to kind of take a break and do something media related. Maybe just because we haven't talked about that. Maybe just do the first pilot episode of the old 70s Wonder Woman show and talk about it.
Yeah, and let me clarify something. I love Linda Carter as Wonder Woman. I'm not knocking that, so I don't want the fan base to come after me goes thinking I'm saying nasty stuff about her. I'm not. I thought she was a great Wonder Woman, and she was one of those characters I wish they would have had her her play Hippolyta, or or they gotta have her in some form on the reboot movie, just because she is such an iconic, playing that. And she did that great job where there was the moments of, it's the fighting style for that era, but also there was a nice blend of comedy and action in it. So I'm not knocking her. I'm just saying the overall general look and feel from my memories from when I was a kid watching this was Themyscira was more of the Greek, gardens of, where it's, people frolicking through the garden and, enjoying, I don't know, the sipping from the wine and eating the grapes and just everything is la 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 la, happy, happy, happy. That's not, again, these are my childhood memories of the TV show, so I can't really say, but that's the kind of stuff that, while I'm not going to knock saying yes, they would have peace and they would enjoy themselves, but the underlining root of who they are needs to have that warrior. They need to have that training. They need to have those moments where, yes, they have their peace and they celebrate their peace, because that's Diana's greatest strength, is that she is an instrument of peace, not really an instrument of war. But she knows how to throw down. She is, trained. She is part of who she is. And we saw in Batman versus Superman a really cool warrior, and I want to see that continue. I wanted to see, that kind of stuff. And those are the kind of stuff that I'm really looking forward to seeing, that balance of the agent of peace versus also the instrument of war.
I get your point with that. I guess I see what you're saying. As far as the idea that Themyscira itself was a little bit cleaner, I think is what you're going for. I would love to talk about this. We should at some point in time in the future. Can we plan that in the future? Let's do the pilot. Because I would love to talk to you about it. Because please don't get me wrong. I'm not critiquing your comments. You have a perception of it that may not change. And I would actually love to talk it through and see what we like and what we don't. Because it's kind of fun to view it now, today, right? And I think we're naturally going to talk about what were our childhood memories through it, but also how does it hold up? And what matches our perceptions today, if anything, and what doesn't, and does it matter? Because here's the thing, the Christopher Reeve Superman films are a great example. Very 70s in their portrayal and presentation. I think they're very classic as far as film history goes and what they delivered. There's a beauty to the cinematography of those films, particularly like the Krypton sequences, the Fortress of Solitude, things like that. His flight. There's some really, really amazing stuff that I think was happening in that film. The first one in particular I'm talking about. I would be interesting to talk about that television show for what it was trying to do for a 70s era show. And I think it'd just be fun as a topic, just to debate and hammer it out, just for fun. Because I don't think there's any right or wrong answers. I think it would be interesting to see what we agree or disagree on. Let's plan to do that for the future at some point.
Yeah. And there are right answers in their mind.
This is why I edit the show. Because what people don't realize, there's probably another 200 lost episodes of Raging Bullets that involve stuff I've completely cut out that were nonsense that you were spewing. Cut and paste. We can make a dueling senseis. It'd be you versus you.
How you doing, Sean and Jim? Just listening to your guy Myron's podcast on the blog of Or, and I had some concerns that he was expressing. The sales numbers, he followed those, and he was telling his compatriot on the podcast that Green Lantern, both books sales have fell below pre-52 level. And I find this unbelievable. These two books are great books, great titles. I don't understand how these books have fallen this far in sales to this level. The book's quality is high as ever. Matter of fact, for the last 10 years, Green Lantern has been the most consistent comic book as far as care taken towards that franchise as any book I've ever seen since like a book like the X-Men or Batman. I mean, so I don't understand why fans are dropping off in droves. Something I don't understand this. This book is quality. You got 2 books. You only have 2 books on the shelf now. They're giving you these books 2 times a month, which actually makes it better on your pocketbook because you actually getting 2 books of the title instead of having 4 to spend more money. So actually, DC is doing you a service by putting books out every 2 weeks because it actually cuts down your spending. Instead of having 5 or 6 books of one character, you just have 2, but you're getting them 4 times a month, which would equal 4 books if you was trying to split the books and make 2 more books. So I tell people, just please go and support this book because I hope this book doesn't get canceled. I mean, Green Lantern's been canceled not many times. It always changed forms before they would cancel it. But I want this book to stay around. I mean, I just don't understand this. But on a better note, I read the great issue of Blue Beetle number 8, and boy, do we have a surprise. I always like obscure characters in comic books. And what do I see when I turn the page? I saw the great one-man army corps making a return to the DC universe, and boy, was I just doing flips. I think I actually did a backflip in the chair. I was so excited about this character. Hopefully, DC can capitalize on this character and keep him around the DC universe because he's never, since I've been reading comic books, has never been capitalized on. In his career of being around to the 70s, I've only known him to be in backups in a book called The Warlord. He's had a 4-issue miniseries by John Byrne, and then the original book by great Jack Kirby, and of course the 52 run, which lasted about 9 issues. So please, DC, get this character in a book on a team that just need America something. We need him back in the DC universe. Along with the Martian Manhunter, DC, I need to know what your plans is for this character, and where is the Captain Marvel family at? We need all these characters back, but I know you got a plan, DC, so I'm going to just wait, read, and enjoy. The next book I want to talk about is Action Comics 978. My favorite team of all time, Fold against Superman, the Superman Revenge Squad is coming back to this DC universe again, and they are bringing the great Mongo, who is my actual favorite Superman foe, and I love him, and he's coming back, and this is very exciting for me because Superman is going to take some beat down, and this is what I like, where he has these type of foes to really push the Man of Steel. This is really great. This new rebirth stuff is really doing good. The plot is fantastic. Batman, I felt so sorry for him when he saw his dad and had to watch his dad go away again. But being the great Bruce Wayne Batman, he didn't break. He kept going strong. He finished the mission, and he didn't break down. That's why we all love the Bat. You gentlemen have a great day, and as long as y'all guys are reading DC comic books, make mine Raging Bullets, and you guys have a pleasant day. I'm so excited about this universe. Sean and Jim, this is Rasul again, and I forgot a point that I had when I called you the first time. I want to talk about the Vertigo line. I've noticed that the output from the line is very small, so I was just making a proposal. I think that this will work. It's known as a trade paperback line. Why don't DC let the writers and artists tell their stories in graphic album form? Can you imagine a Swamp Thing, 200 pages? Instead of giving us floppy, just make a overwhelming epic storyline with whatever character you want. I don't care if it's Swamp Thing, Battle Stranger, or create their own project, because it seems like the books do better in trade format anyway. So just make the whole line trade. Just tell the writing artists, make the books maybe, okay, you have a 5-issue arc. You got 5 sections of the arc. It's a 25-issue series. Just make 5 trade paperback to graphic albums, which will make the stories more epic and actually probably will bring on a new type of readership because they'll be thinking they're getting something different, instead of just going to the store every month. we just can get these release these books every 3 months or 4 times a year in graphic album form and see if that works. Because I haven't seen a lot of input on the line. I see the Young Animal stuff is picking up. It's got about 7 or 8 titles on the line, and some more coming soon. But the Vertical line, when I look on a list, I don't see anything. It's hardly, I don't think they have even 10 ongoing titles for that line. So I would like to know what you and Jim think about my idea, because I would just rather read the books in graphic album form or trade paperback form in epic story arcs instead of just waiting on floppies. If they don't want to put out floppies for this line, so I think that's the way it should be done. And I'd like to know what you gentlemen think about that. And you guys have a pleasant day and make mine rage. And y'all guys keep on raging. Love the podcast. And thank you guys for turning me on to more comic book podcasts. So now I'm up to about 25 podcasts with you guys between comic books and wrestling. And so I'm busy. And at this point, have listened to 360 episodes of your podcast. And I'm almost at the end. I'm going to probably be sad once I reach the end. So, but, then I'll just have to wait for the rest of the shows like the rest of the people that are out there listening. But, yeah, you guys keep up the good work, and I love the podcast. Thank you. Have a pleasant day.
It's one of the things that I think is amazing with what we do, and I really appreciate him reaching out and talking about the fact that he actually listens to our past episodes. I think one of the reasons why over the years we've tried to do complete issues and complete storylines and different things like that on there and mix it up a bit is I was always hoping that there would be some lifespan to our episodes. And you never know. You know what I mean? They can be done in ones and people will listen to it in those. Our back catalog gets a ton of traffic, and I really appreciate anybody who comes across this particular episode, and has been listening to our back catalog. I appreciate you giving us your time, whether you did it through all of them or sporadically. It means a lot because we pay to have that back catalog up there. It is part of what we do, and I'm really flattered that people find value in the podcasting product that we've put out. So thank you, Russell, for doing it. He talks about the Green Lantern sales. I get worried about that because I'm enjoying those books just like he is. I agree about the value. We were dealing with 4 Green Lantern titles or more before with specials and things like that. So the output, he's right, financially is not any different. I like the story delivery of having 2 issues of each title available each month because I feel like I'm getting more story progression, and it's working for me. I don't feel like there's a difference financially. I'm worried about the sales drop too, like he is, because Green Lantern is a title that's been shelved over the years. And it's been repackaged to try and rework it, and then many times shelved because of it. But on the greater level, I'm worried about any time we start seeing a shrinkage in DC sales numbers. And I would say this across comics. Whether you're a Marvel fan, a DC fan, whatever, I want people flocking to comics. I get worried when I see sales numbers shrinking because I don't ever want my delivery of these characters to be just in video games, just in film. I love multimedia, television. I love all that stuff, seeing my characters there, but I always want it spinning out of the comics. I don't want the comics to be something that is a forgotten past. So that is something I worry about. Where are you at in the Green Lantern books right now? Like, how do you feel the quality is, Jim? Do you feel that there should be a drop in the sales numbers on it? Are you feeling that you're getting a lesser experience in the Green Lantern books than you were getting before? There's no wrong answer on that. I'm not. I'm digging it. Russell and I are very in sync, but where are you?
Yeah, we're all 3 of us are on the same page here. And I was kind of surprised when he was talking about because like you, I don't really follow the sales numbers or any of that stuff. So I had no idea it wasn't doing, there was any type of drop, much less. I was, from the story we've been getting and everything that's going on with the different green books, especially, with the Green Lanterns title, that was a title that, I was surprised at how much I've really, over time, grown to love that title. Because for me, I'm a core guy. I want the core stories. I want the stories of all the Lanterns. And, on paper, when I first started seeing about, that the one title would be those 2, I'm like, what? I was a little bit leery. And as the story has progressed, as the characters have gone on, as I've gotten to understand who they are, I'm really digging them. It's one of those things that I don't I everybody's got our take and everyone's got opinions, and it's one of those things. I've got my lanterns that I really like stories of that I wish we would get more stories of. But again, it's one of those things where, these are two really cool characters that I'm like, man, this is kind of a neat thing they're doing here. And it's one of those that I'm very, very green happy.
Yeah, I am too. He went on to mention the Blue Beetle stuff that's going on right now. I love the reintroduction of characters into the universe. I like when they take the time to flesh them out and it makes sense within a story, and they try new concepts out. And I think doing it within a title is a great way to do it. I like to see, if the characters maybe don't have the ability to last in their own title, this is a great way to introduce them to the universe to be used elsewhere. But it brings back toys. He mentions a lot of characters we're missing, like Captain Marvel. I want to see Captain Marvel in the DC universe. I want to see that character have his own series. I think it's been an interesting character at DC where I think they do some great reimaginings of the character, but then it hasn't had legs. And I want to see it have legs. I want to see that really be delivered, because I'm a big fan of the character concept. I grew up I was a fan of the television show first, and then really got into the character in the comics. And I think there's room for this character. It's interesting. What is your experience? Like, I know as of when we've seen the character around the Justice League and things like that, that's been a lot of your exposure to the character. What is your take? Is this a character you want to see in his own series? Do you want to see him on a team? What would be the best use of Captain Marvel right now, Jim, in your mind? Where would you as a fan are you a fan, and where would you like to see the character?
Well, first off, I'm not really a fan, just because I've had less exposure to him. It's nothing negative against the character or anything. We started getting some glimmers of him when he was on the Justice League, and I started to understand it. It was one of those things where I started to understand the love of the character, how he was the giant kid. So he had, when you get a creator who writes him, they got to make sure they capture that childlike wonder in this superpowered hero. And I started seeing that in a couple of the stories and just his usage. So I kind of was getting it, but I didn't have that connection to him. I didn't have that, oh, he's an awesome character, I want to see him again. So for me, I think I would like to see him again back in that team dynamic, where you could really play off of, who he is, and you can play off, the fact that he looks like an adult, but he's really a kid. And when they first, started talking about him on the Justice League, and they were saying he and Cyborg were going to become running buddies, and they had all these different stuff they were talking about. I was like, man, I want to see that, because I want to see that kind of connection. So it's, I don't know. For me, I'm a team dynamic guy with him, just because I don't know him well enough to say, yes, put him in a solo book.
See, that's an interesting thing with the character, too. I don't know what the key is. I would love a Captain Marvel book. I really would. I love Shazam. I love the character. I know they got to call him Shazam now because of Captain Marvel over at Marvel. So I'd love to see the character rolled out again in the DC universe in a way that makes sense. The comic market worries me right now. And I say that not in the sense that it detracts from my enjoyment or anything like that. I absolutely love comics. It's more of I get worried about the variety of titles available. I do think we as fans need to, more than ever, do what we can to foster new fans. Open doorways. If you're digging a book, please promote it. If you're digging a book that a friend might enjoy, buy them a trade. Make that a gift. Introduce people to comics, because it's a great medium. It's one that I want. I've mentioned on the show many times. I want it around years from now, but we've got to do our best to help point people at titles that they may enjoy, even if it's something you're not reading that you're like, I know my friend is into this property or this type of story. Let me give them this. See what they think. Introduce them to the graphic medium. I don't need everything I'm reading to be the only things that other people are reading. I actually like that there's too much out there for me to read. I always want that to be the case with comics, because that means you can pick and choose and make your perfect pull list. If there's less variety, you've got limitations there. So I really love that about comics. So that's something that is, I get worried when I see that there's certain characters that I'm worried about launching, like Captain Marvel. I'm worried about launching that character. Yeah. How do you launch that character and really get a good readership? You got to put certain creators, I think, on that book. And will they do that? I don't know. So that's one I hope launches with the right team. The Vertigo output, I couldn't agree with them more. We got a shrinking Vertigo output. The trades part, Russell's bringing out an interesting point. I guess and this is something where trade sales is not something that has ever been like super out in the forefront, and they've never been looked at as a driving force to keeping an imprint running. I think that they've given Vertigo over the years a certain latitude because there was a bookstore crowd that was very into the Vertigo titles like Sandman and things like that, and that just increased over time. I don't know that exists to the same level that it did. Can you foster it again? Sure, but I think you really need to find a way to make it cool. I don't know what that is right now. I don't know of a big bookstore crowd right now that is out there to the same level that it used to be. I remember, you and I'm going back to college years. Do you remember when we'd go and like hang out at Borders before going to dinner,
Yep.
to browse around? My wife and I went for the first time, there's a Barnes & Noble's by a Max and Irma's by us, and we were browsing through there. There was a decent amount of people in there, but it just dawned on me how the numbers of standalone bookstores are shrinking. So I get worried about that. And I know a lot of that's due to things going online like Amazon and stuff like that. But I think some of this stuff is impulse purchases from browsing, being able to have those on the shelf. That's why I get worried about comics and digital delivery, because I don't think they've tapped into a way to reach out to a new crowd via digital delivery. I actually think some of your indies are doing it a little better than your larger companies. And I think there's a lot to be learned by that as far as how do we use digital to promote and build a new audience, besides the bookstore crowd. Because I think he's right. I think you can do it through a trade method. But the problem is, how do you finance that? Because before the idea was the singles financed the trades, and gave a financial backing to the book because there's an immediacy. You get money off the first issue, you get money off the second issue, third issue as you're going through. So by the time you've hit a trade's worth, you've earned some money off of that book already. Not being able to see those numbers, it's not so much the first trade coming out, it's how do you know how successful the first trade's going to be? And then how do you know that you can greenlight a second? And I think there's a difference between the monthly books being able to generate that. I think there's an answer. I think Russell's idea is interesting. It's just how do you measure that to make sure that you're getting accurate numbers and that be a continuing line. I would read Vertigo all in trade if that was the way they went. I think he's right. It's a ready-made platform for that. Would you? How would you be as inclined to try it if Vertigo went to all trade?
Actually, yeah. If that was the plan that they were doing an all trade thing, I would jump on that. I liked that idea for the Vertigo stuff. It was like one of the you think the Earth One stuff that they were doing. How that was all in trade, and how that was all in not trade. It was a hardcover, but those stories. I liked having that nice collected edition sitting on my shelf. I think the same thing could be said for the Vertigo stuff. And a lot of times when I start doing my downsizing, I go. One of the things I do is titles like Vertigo and the Young Animals stuff. I say, okay, let's start shifting that into the trade side. And that's how I get some of that stuff.
So if it was a trade delivery.
Yeah, they said this is how we're delivering it. We're not doing monthlies. For me, that would encourage my purchase of it.
Really? So do you think you would try more Vertigo if that was how the line
think so.
was
delivered? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, because you think about it, when you get that trade, you're getting multiple, issues together. You're getting that larger story. So for me, I'm going to feel like I'm going to get bang for my buck. Yeah, I'm going to pay a little bit more than I am for the floppy, but it's going to be worth it to me because I'm getting a larger story for that amount of money. Whereas like with if I start buying just the monthly floppies, then I've got to give it time for the full story arc to play out. I've got to, and it ends up being like, I'm 12, 15 issues in before I finally make that decision. This isn't for me. Whereas if they're putting everything together in a trade, I'm reading that first trade, I'll see how I feel about that first trade, and that'll be, in my mindset, the way my thinking goes, it'd be easier for me to walk away from something I'm not enjoying.
So, because you're like, hey, I can. Oh, but also, do you think it's easier to try it because you would be, you'd be getting an arc?
Yeah, because I'm getting a full story. It's easier for me to try it.
Would you now? I know we've both been buying paper and digital, and you've been experimenting in digital more and more, which was something that I was doing more than you were. What about digital trades? What if it was a digital? Obviously there would be a paper trade. Do you see yourself trying digital trades, or would you prefer the paper trades when it's a trade format?
Well, that's how I'm reading some Marvel stuff, is digital trades.
Okay.
The Captain America Steve Rogers stuff that you pointed me towards, I'm getting that in digital trades. I'm not doing individual, digital. I'm getting, when that trade comes out of that, that's what I get and that's what I read. And that's kind of, again, for that simple, when I started looking at, just the finances and just everything, I'm like, plus also the simplicity of wait until the trade comes out, click on it, go. I don't need to have those stories up to date. These are just, the side stories, and if there's a story that I really, really like, then I'll wait till it comes out on a hardcover collected edition, and that's the version I'll get.
Yeah, I like that. You know what they could do too, and I think it would be an interesting thing. Then they could use, maybe a certain amount of the first issue as a preview and distribute it. And if you want the rest of the story, click here and buy, and have links to paper and digital versions of it that you could purchase. I would love that method. It's interesting. Yeah. I would be interested to see how it would sell. I'd love to see them try it because I'm a big fan of the Vertigo line. And he mentioned Young Animals continuing to grow. I just read this week Bug, the Forager, which is Michael Allred on art, Lee Allred, Laura Allred. They were all teaming up together. I'm a big Michael Allred junkie. And this Bug the Forager is going back to kind of the New Gods and Genesis, where this is it's the idea is that there's a hierarchy in the New Gods, and Bug is really considered like a utility group of people. That's the part that I find, like the idea that, there is the gods, and then there's the, the regular people, and then there's the bugs that are like, their job is they're considered to be lesser by the gods because they do the menial tasks and things like that, and they're considered nothing more than what they are. Well, Bug the Forager kind of gets tired of being Bug, or being that stuck in that foraging role, and develops a new identity and kind of starts breaking out and exploring. And you've got this character that's now going on adventures, but they're very Kirby-esque kind of, what do you want to call it? Like pop kind of adventures, which is very Michael Allred in the artwork and the whole team. And I really enjoyed it for a first issue. I don't know anything about Bug the Forager. I don't know the history of the character or anything like that. I'm going in blind. I'm in really mainly the art was the first draw. I'm finding the story to be a lot of fun. Issue 1 drew me in. It was a crazy story where you got to see Bug on a journey away from his world. He was entering into like these dreamlike sequences that he was trying to get out of. And it was fun to kind of see that, waking up in a different dream and trying to find his way out. It was an interesting sort of journey. The artwork is absolutely incredible. I'm a big fan of, obviously, Michael Allred's art, so that'll draw me in every time. With these Young Animal books, how are you trying those? Are you trying all of them? You trying them on a case-by-case basis? What is the way you're...
I'm trying them all just because, for the show, but also just because of curiosity. I wanted to see what was what, and so far I'm happy with them. I've been getting them regularly. I'm behind on the reading just because there's been, again, it's that whole time crunch thing where I'm like, I don't have the time to read, so it gets kind of the Young Animal series kind of is gotten pushed to the to the backdrop, just because I'm trying to read all the other stuff. But it was funny because you mentioned when we talked on the phone Bug, so I actually pulled out my issue of Bug and I read it, because one, I like Michael Allred's art, so I wanted to see that. But again, because you said you wanted to mention, I was like, let me read it, and it's a cool story. I want to read more. I want to see where it goes, but I really have no idea who this guy is.
I don't either.
It was, I'm like, okay, and they did a great job telling the story, that like how you talked about the hierarchy and how he was treated just like a bug, and he's trying to step out from being just a bug, and how Orion looked down on him and the High Father wasn't too nice to him and whatnot, so it's the you kind of get that whole understanding of where he's coming from. So they did a great job in the story telling you that. I don't know any of his past stuff, so in a way it's kind of nice that you don't know the past stuff, because then you're just looking at the story that's currently in front of you. But also there is there is a comfortability knowing who these people are, and whenever I start getting into the New God stuff and the Jack Kirby stuff, I have no idea who these people are. Other than the big names, I'm clueless. So it's always an interesting experience when I start reading those titles. But this one they did a great job with telling the story that I understand what's going on. And it's, as I said, it's kind of a neat story, and I want someone to read the rest of that. I want, when the issues come out, I'm going to keep reading it. But it's it is one of those things I was like, okay, what's this?
One thing we should clarify about the character. The character died.
Yeah.
And this is the start off of the story, so we're not revealing anything that's like spoilery later in the issue. The character wakes up in a cocoon, and it's just kind of like, I didn't know I could do this. So that part was really fun for me. But then what did you think of like the dreamlike sequences and that type of thing? Because I know sometimes when things get heady like that, like it was creepy. There's this whole bit where there's this ghost girl setting up dominoes that winds up being a mother box. And I'm like, he recognizes like, oh my gosh, she's setting up a mother box, but you're doing it wrong. And I really liked that everything in the dream sequence had a purpose. And it was all about him finding his way out and finding out what was happening to him and how to get out and free. I really liked that concept of the whole thing, and that each of the players was Domino, and how he wants to break away from being just a domino. He doesn't want to be placed on a board and pushed where to fall. He wants his freedom. He wants to explore. He wants to find his own identity, not the one that is bound to him. That was the part that I found captivating, because I think we've all, I think in life we all kind of quest to try and find ourselves. And I thought Bug was trying to do that. I like that the classic Sandman also made an appearance in this because of the fact that it was a dream sequence. And that character seemingly is the first real character that he encounters, which was kind of neat. It's a good little story. It's for anyone who's looking for some great artwork and an interesting character to follow. I felt like in the first issue I was just starting to wrap my heads around who this character was and what his whole makeup was. There was enough in the first issue that interested me that I want to read the second. I hope, because of the fact that I really like the art and was enjoying the story so far, and I'm going to use enjoying as a thing there because I don't quite know the character yet like you. I think we're in the same place with this. The artwork's bringing me back for sure. The story was interesting enough that I really want to see a second issue to see how it expands, to see if this is something that gets me really attached to it. So they did the right things for a first issue of a character that I know nothing about. They were interesting enough that I want to see more. Whether or not I become a fan of it is really dependent on the first arc. There's a 6-issue arc here. I'm going to read the first arc, and I want to see where this story goes. And I'll be interested to see if this is something that I get hooked on. I'm enjoying it right now. And that's not a knock on it. That's like you're saying, this is new territory. I want to see where it's going to go. Did you, I guess, take the show out of it? You've read the first issue. Was there enough there for you to say, I do want to see what goes on in issue 2?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely there's enough, not just show-wise. I read it because of the show, but I'm not continuing to read it because of the show. There was enough in that first issue that has me going, okay, who is this bug? What's going on here? And again, it's one of those things where I want to see. I do want to see see if I can figure out this character.
Yeah, so it's cool. I do want to thank Russell for calling in. I want to remind everyone, if I don't get tongue-tied, about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434. Or Dr. Norge on Skype. It's always in our show notes, so if you don't catch it there. We love having you part of the show. We do air all voicemails, so feel free to call in. And Russell, we always appreciate you calling. Anybody wants to call in, please go ahead and call in. I like the interaction. I like hearing your thoughts. So these are always fun segments for me to hear that piece. Don't worry about the fact that there's not the traditional voicemail message on there anymore. That's a Skype thing. Our voicemail is through Skype, so that it's still us. Just go ahead and call, and we love your thoughts about anything that's going on with DC and comics in general. I think there were some great topics that Russell brought up. I love hearing what you guys want to discuss, and we'd be happy to respond to it.
Holy caffeine!
Jim, I want to remind everybody about RagingBullets.com. That's where I'll give you updates on what's going on with the podcast. You know, especially with Jim and I, we've had crazy schedules recently. We want to keep you guys up to date on when we're doing new episodes, when we're recording, so you're in the loop. And you as our audience are really important to us. Jim and I have some big plans for a number of upcoming episodes that we're going to be announcing. Our next one is going to be Wonder Woman, so I'm excited to shout that one out right now. Our website does link to Twitter. It does link to a Facebook page. We have a Facebook group community that we do share, and I really want to shout out the community itself. The people that run it have really done an amazing job. It's really become their community. It's martial law over there, and I love it. It is, to me, it's my first news source. I pop in to see what's going on with DC comics in general, and just how people are feeling, attitudes, things they're concerned about, questions that are out there. What are people talking about in comics? It gets me excited. It's a positive, upbeat, fan-based group. They wear their badges of honor as fans, and it's just really a community that I'm proud to be a part of. So thank you to everybody who's a part of that community. Jim, we're also available on Google+. I'm available on the PlayStation Network. It's Raging_Bullets. So there's lots of ways to find us, and we love really connecting and interacting with all of you. Jim, we are sponsored, of course, by DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. What's going on at DCBService.com?
Well, DCBS is your one-stop shopping for comics. Of course, they have the bundles that I always talk about, where they give you some great discounts on the various bundle packs of the different DC titles. But they're not just about the monthly floppies. They have great deals on the collected, on some hardcovers, but also statues, action figures, clothing, various collectibles, and whatnot. Give DCBS a look through, and I guarantee you'll find something that is like, wow, that looks really cool. I should get that.
Over at InStockTrades.com, I mentioned the deals of the week. They've got Doom Patrol, trade paperback volume 1. If you aren't reading this Young Animals series, it's really great. It's 50% off, only $8.49. The Wonder Woman hardcover by John Byrne, 50% off, only $19.99. Great time to read some more Wonder Woman with the movie coming out. We also got the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps trade paperback volume 2. 45% off, only $9.34. We got Dead Man, Dark Mansion, 45% off, only $9.34. Remember, InStockTrades.com, if you've missed any of the titles that you wanted to pick up, this is a great way to get collected editions, whether you're looking for hardcovers, trade paperbacks. They've got all the collected editions you're looking for available at a discount. So I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Jim, as we mentioned, we will be back next week with Wonder Woman the movie. I'm super excited to record this episode, and we'll be glad to talk to everyone then. So we will see you next week.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.